Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m., both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, hi online folks, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a brown woolly jumper on this cold winter's day. So every Friday we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. Can anyone new to the studio put your hand up? We got one. All right. Oh, two. Okay. Well, we're doing it. All right. What is the Pervasive Media Studio then? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding, product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, the University of the West of England, and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And we offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events, and opportunity, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make time for collaboration. So, quick bit of housekeeping. Please feel free to move around. There's a kitchen over there. You can grab a glass of water, tea, coffee. Please don't use the microwave. It makes noise and all that. We have a quiet space, so if you need to take a break at any point, you can just go through to the room here to my left, your right, just around the corner. Feel free to just pop in there and take a break. Fire exits, if you hear fire alarm, we're not planning anything. It's probably real. Fire exits are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right. Then there, at either end, the studio team will direct you in the event that something goes horribly wrong. And there are accessible toilets and baby change. Again, no babies. Sometimes there's a baby, but there is baby change in the corridor over there next to the kitchen. There will be Q&A at the end of the talk, so if you're watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lawatim is at the back. He will be your voice in the room. If you're in the building, you can just stick your hand up and we'll send a microphone around. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Our speaker for today is Brian Gibson. Brian is an artist, workshop facilitator, and studio resident. He began as a self-taught photographer, but his multidisciplinary approach spans photography, publishing, mixed media, and technology. And today he's going to be talking about his latest project, Fusion, merging the architectural spaces of technology and the urban environment to reveal their inexact interconnectedness. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Brian.
Hi. This is my second talk here that I did a talk about just over a year ago. So the work that I'm doing at the minute is based on the work that I was doing back then, which was reworking technology. So I was deconstructing technology and making different bits of assemblages and making prints and artworks from them. So I'll go through the different things that I've been doing over the last year. And I've currently got an exhibition on at the studios in Bath, which is part of Bath University, so it's like a sibling to the Watershed, really, to Pervasive Media. So I'll just go through some of the work that I did in the past. So first of all, I'll explain about the work. I don't know why that's not come on there. There should be another slide on there. But I'll just say, the exhibition that I'm doing is called Fusion. It's a body of work that explores the architectural spaces found within devices of everyday technology like laptops, Xboxes, mobile phones. And then kind of I've been exploring the sort of environment that we walk through, because both we inhabit both those environments. So part of the process that I work with includes working with analogue. So I'm just sort of printing things, very tactile experience of taking a laptop apart, but also kind of then just putting them back into digital format sort of through Photoshop and different free phone apps and different things like that. So I enjoy doing that. I still don't know why that hasn't come up there, the slide. So the slide that you'll see in a second will be some of the work that I did for a publication made through Container magazine last year, which was called Reworking Technology. The work began during lockdown. And so what I started doing during the lockdown was I was doing some workshops remotely up in Glasgow, and because these were creative workshops done remotely, I was using bits of paper to everybody was working with what they had at home. And because of that experience of working with what was at hand, I started to think about my own practice and started working with what I had at hand. And one of the first things I had at hand was my son's Xbox, like an old one. It wasn't working. So I started taking that apart, and that felt really kind of quite liberating, really, to take it apart. And then, because I'd bought it, it was mine, I owned it, but then there's this strange thing about kind of you're not supposed to do that, because I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to decide, I wasn't going to make another sort of Xbox or another bit of tech. So, if that works. So now you can see it. Right. All right. So that's my son's Xbox, Xbox. And this is this is just opening it up and just putting a couple of filters on and just what I saw inside the Xbox. And you've got the heat sinks, the capacitors, you've got resistors there, and you've got the motherboard. And it just looks really architectural. So then, let's see if this works now. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a relief. So this is the work I did with Container magazine. So this is the cover of the broadsheet, which is a print of a mobile phone. So I've taken the phone apart and then just used the circuit board and then inked it up and then just done a mono print from it. You can see what I've done there with the laptop there. I've kind of taken it apart, then used the screen as an ink pad, and again, sort of inking up the surface of the laptop, and then taking a print off it. So I've started doing a series of those, and then you've got the underlayer of the laptop as well, so I'm exploring the different layers of that. So those are kind of very flat images, but I started also exploring creating assemblages with the bits of tech that I had. And so I started making assemblages of placing things and then just making prints of these. So this is kind of more or less the work that I was doing when I gave the last talk last year. So what I've been doing is I've been working with what's at hand, and I've been working with a finite amount of resources. So the resources I've been using have kind of basically been this box and another box. So you can see the laptop, the Xbox. There's an old BT phone there. There's bits of, I've got bits of circuit board there, TV remote there, and these are bits of tech that I've been using as well, again, to make the artwork. There's an old video thing there. So, and I've been doing workshops recently with this work. So about 2 weeks ago, I did a workshop at the Arnold Feeney, and so this is some of the work that we're doing at the Arnold Feeney. And it had to be a dry workshop, so I couldn't do any printing. So it was just doing kind of, like brass ribbons. So I was kind of just doing graphite with graphite and chalks and pencils and things like that. I'll show you some of the work that was created then. So this is some of the work that was created. This is the old Dell laptop. And this, you can see there's a remote stick, and there's bits of heat sinks there, and they've just used different parts. But it was a really interesting workshop because everybody produced different bodies of work, and we'd explore with different coloured pencils and crayons. And it's a very sort of tactile experience of kind of people getting involved with technology without necessarily having to know how to use technology. And it's, you know, nothing breaks down, so, which is a good thing. And these are 2 pieces I've done. So that's a phone there that I've used, and that's a selfie, I guess. And then the eyes are the actual camera bit. So you've got the camera there, and you've got that bit for the eyes. And again, this is like from the laptop that I've been using. And then I've started doing layers of graphite drawn over the top of it. So I've done quite a few of those different ones, and I've started doing things like with very fine paper, and then kind of doing both sides. So almost like doing layers and then putting light through them, so they become sort of, so I'm kind of taking the layers process of something like Photoshop and then taking it back to an analog process. Okay, next slide. So the next thing is, I've started doing those workshops and working that way. So I'm working in about 3 different directions really with my work. So I started making work around the assemblages that I was creating and the architectural spaces that we moved through. So I was kind of quite interested in that area. And so over the last year, I've kind of developed a body of work of images. And so this is some of the work, not all of the work, just some of the work that I've been doing, which is on display at the studio in Bath. So I'll go through the first one. One of the things I decided to do during the lockdown was to read 2 books. One was Finnegan's Wake, and the other one was Dante's Divine Comedy. I couldn't do Finnegan's Wake. I got about, I don't know, 300 pages through. Anyway, Dante's Inferno, I started reading that, and then kind of, just at the same time as I was doing the work, this kind of image appeared. So it's kind of, you know, I'm just working in the studio, playing with different ideas, and then all of a sudden, like, an image comes up. And there's bits of tech assemblage there, and also there's it's the interior of a church with a disco ball in. So there was a piano concert sometime last year in one of the churches around here by a musician called Jimmy Galvin. And so I had some photographs of that, and then I've kind of layered and played with those 2 different images. But for me, it's like a bit like Dante's Purgatory, sort of like somewhere between a nightclub and kind of, you know, where you kind of, there's kind of lots of different things going on. So that's that one. And then I was doing the thing, oh, I don't know why the next one hasn't come up again. All right. So one of the other things is the next slide that should be up is called I Dream of Cities. So again, reading about spatials, the different spaces and that. So I was like kind of starting to look around different buildings and things like that, and then still using the devices that I had at hand. Has anybody got any questions so far about the workshops that I've been doing or anything whilst waiting for that to come up? I'll just go back to this. Okay, so this is kind of I think it was quite easy to go to sort of down a sort of dystopian way with the artwork, and I was kind of wanted to, which is not a bad thing in itself, but I kind of wanted to explore a more colourful side in a way. So this is one from a series called I Dream of Cities. So and again, I'm still using the same bits of tech. There's a bit of a heat sink there. There's a TV remote there, which has been stripped. Maybe it's better if I don't explain what's in the pictures, but and because they're still images, they're just meant, you know, they're 14 by 14 in 16 frames, so they're meant to be looked at. So over time. So it's a bit strange talking about them now, where they're just in a slideshow and then moved on to the next one. Because there's lots of different little things going on. Okay. And this is the other side of I Dream of Cities. So I'll keep quiet for a second and just let you look at that. Again, this is kind of these bits here at the background are kind of monoprints that I've made, and then I've layered them with bits of paint on the top. So this one's called Angels Amongst Us. So kind of just that. Some of the work that I've been interested in as was a German artist called Horst Adameit, who was a student of Joseph Beuys, but he had a breakdown. He never went back to art college again, but he started taking lots of Polaroid photographs. It's got nothing to do with the art world, but he started taking photographs, this was in the 80s and 90s, and just writing down over them about what he saw as cold rays. So he sort of saw bits of information around everything. And I thought that work has kind of influenced some of my work in a way of like what you can't see is around. So the idea that, you know, there's kind of information passing through the air, but you can't see it. And the same thing about like with angels or entities or whatever. You know, there could be. So just exploring that idea of you've got something static, like buildings and all that, and then you've kind of got something else that's going on. Okay. It's not working again.
You've got a different cable as well. Something here between here and TV.
Okay. Probably better from this side. The next image is going to be called Platform 9. And this is not coming up just yet. Oh, here it is, yeah. So again, it's kind of creating space with the work that I've got. And it's a kind of retro futuristic view of things. Probably what the galleries would be like in 300 years' time or something like that. Who knows? But I was interested in creating space, you know, like a spaces within a sort of within a flat image, really. So the next one is it's still not working. So what I found interesting is because the way I work is stylistically, my work seems to change from either, like monochromatic to color, different things like that. But by having a limited amount of resources, I'm kind of exploring the different ways that the work can travel.
Can I ask what your relationship to colour was actually? Like, your choices about colour?
My choices about color. I don't know, it's mostly intuitive, really. The way I work is kind of like, I'll be working all day in the studio and then kind of go, well, that seems to work, that, yeah. So I try not to think about too much when I'm making things and then kind of let it happen. So this one's called Maybe Someday. So again, it was like looking at mycelium networks and about information and just things about maybe one day there'll be sort of, plant-based technology which is biodegradable. And again, kind of just playing with the colors and the heat sinks and the circuit boards and moving them around each other. And some of the workshops I've been doing now with the mark making exercises, they're using the circuit boards and that, but also kind of I'm bringing plants in so people can sort of combine between the two of them. So next one. Oh, right. So this one, also during the lockdown and that, I started reading, I think, virtually every Kafka book that was available. So, which is great when you're trying to get through to the doctors or something like that, or Ryanair for getting your money back for a flight that never happened. So this is a construction that I've made, and it's more of a photograph rather than a print. And this has been, again, all the same materials that you saw in that box beforehand, and it's been lit with just things I've got at hand, which are like bicycle lights. So there's just a bicycle light there. I've got like a little torch above it, and I'm just swinging it there. And I've made little short films of that, and I'd quite like to sort of explore that in the future. And I'm thinking about maybe wondering what that would be like in VR, but I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. And again, I was thinking about the idea of a Kafka movie without. What you would have noticed in all the work is that there's no people in them. So I quite like that in a way. I have sort of done some work with people in them, but I kind of like the idea of making some kind of Kafkaesque movie, but without any people in it. It'd just be a short film, I think, but there we are. Okay, and this is the back of a BT phone. And that's it. I've got a few more slides, but if anybody's interested, but that's the work if anybody wants to ask any questions about it. I can go back and forth between things. Right.
I just wanted to ask a bit more about the process of, so you're taking analog photography and then manipulating it digitally, is that correct?
Yeah, so some of it I've made things like cyanotypes, and I've explored turmeric prints, different ways of sort of older print processes, analog print processes.
Yeah.
But then eventually the work currently is kind of, printed off digitally.
Yeah.
But I've done cyanotypes as well.
Okay, great.
And turmeric prints as well.
Amazing.
Just I haven't put them in
so
here.
So how much digital editing is there?
It varies from image to image, really.
Yeah.
Again, on this principle with working what I've got at hand, quite a lot of them have been manipulated on my phone digitally, but kind of just using free apps. So I kind of quite like the idea of seeing what I can get out of a free app, and then kind of just go, okay, I've done that now. And then.
So is your focus the overall aesthetic, or the you know, like you're mentioning the books? Is it the narrative? Like what kind of drives the finished image?
I think the sort of interconnected, I can't say it now. I was going to say, but the way things don't always match up, I think, is part of my creative process in a way. So it's kind of embracing that things don't always match up. So there's not one thing, the narrative, or the process. So yeah.
I've got a two-part question from Leon, who asks, firstly, in the collection I Dream of Cities, were all the prints monoprints with paint on top, or did you use any other materials or resources?
So the two images, the first one, the really colourful one, was an assemblage which I manipulated digitally, and then the other one, I Dream of Cities 2, was done using coloured sheets, but then also kind of placing the image on, doing layers as well. So kind of, and there was some manipulation using a phone app as well.
Right. Leon also asks if this is your full-time profession, and if so, how did you go from starting out as a self-taught photographer to being a full-time artist?
Right. Ask me that last question again.
How did you go from being a self-taught photographer to a full-time artist?
It took a long time. It took a long time before I thought that the photographs and what I was doing could be considered art. So that took a long time, and I didn't. It wasn't until I was in my 30s where I thought, actually, this could be art. So I was just somebody who just really enjoyed the process of making things, but I didn't consider it art. And then the whole term of calling yourself an artist has got a lot of baggage with it, I think. So, yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions, Vic?
Hi, I love the images. They're so great. I was interested in when you said there's a TV remote control in this one. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be telling you all the things that are in there. I was just wondering how important it is for people to kind of see those different layers in it and maybe understand where it's coming from. And I guess if people aren't noticing that thing, like what you're trying to say with the image, I don't know if I'm making sense there.
Yeah. I'm quite happy. It's always a bit of a dilemma, really, about how much to explain about it, because then it just kind of spoils the magic of the image. And I think one of the things is, there's one thing about talking it to a group of people, and then there's another thing where it's just on the wall, and people are just going past, and they won't know necessarily what it's about, but then the process for me is important. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I also really love your work. I've got one up on my kitchen wall. You're sort of playing about quite a lot with scale. It feels, you know, you've got these kind of really minute insides of electronics, and then these big sort of cityscapes. And I was wondering if you've thought about scale in the form of like the presentation moment as well. Like you mentioned, maybe thinking about VR, but is there something about scale at the point at which the audience encounter it that you're thinking about as well?
Yeah. I mean, the cyanotypes are quite like A4 size, and the prints are in 16 by 16 frames. But it would be quite nice to see them quite big as well. It's just a matter of cost, really, and getting funding for that and where to show them, really. And then And the idea of immersive technology would be, what would it be like to actually be within that space? I'm kind of still thinking about that, really. But I'd be interested in working with people towards that. I think there's like difficulties with the filming it because of the sort of depth of field and the focus and things like that at the minute. So it would be difficult to get a camera going through the small technology. So I think that's one of the issues. But I'm certainly open to exploring it. Yeah.
I'd also love to see them really big, and then just on that last point, I wonder if there's a similar approach that you could take, thinking about that notion of quite. Like more readily available materials, and perhaps it's not a VR headset, perhaps it's like a mirror on a stick with a torch and a tiny camera, or I don't know. Like I would also love to move through this space, but
yeah.
but maybe that doesn't need a very high tech.
Yeah, I mean,
solution.
One way might be I've been thinking about a little bit, is to do work with projections. So what I want to do with these assemblages would be to take these images that I've got and then to project them onto the work. But it would still be the same scale, but just this whole idea of kind of reusing the same work over and over again, and then projecting it onto new assemblages with the same materials. But also there'd be, projecting onto buildings as well would be quite an interesting thing to explore, and projecting into spaces. So I'd certainly be up for that if anybody's got any spaces to do that. Yeah.
Maybe it's an undershed mission. Thanks.
I think there's a question here.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned the kind of like comparison that you made between architecture and the internal workings of the stuff you were taking apart.
Yeah.
And was that just a purely aesthetic consideration? Because like the thing which was coming up to me was that there seems to be quite a similar logic as well. And I was wondering if that's something you thought about.
Yeah, it was like an aesthetic thing, sort of thing, and I guess like buildings are built to be seen. They're designed to be seen, whereas the architecture within technology is just functional, really, isn't it? So it's not actually meant to be viewed as such. So I'm kind of quite interested in that thing about things which are meant to be seen and things which are designed which are not visible, really. So I don't know if that's an aesthetic thing or not, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. But it just, the way that particularly there was one image which was a rubbing on a piece of paper, and it looked like a sort of architect's plan drawing almost, like a sort of 60s style master plan. And then there's also some stuff which, you're obviously thinking yourself, well, it seems to me like you're thinking yourself into being in the technology and seeing it like buildings. Yeah. And then when you do that, there's this kind of funny thing where actually it does mirror up with the same logic sometime, and that's quite a nice sort of playful thing.
I think something with like the monoprint and the ribbons and things like that, you do get that thing that where it looks like a blueprint, and then because of the way you're shifting with the paper or whatever, then it creates like a 3D effect. So then you have like the spatial aspect of it as well. Yeah,
definitely. And for me, it almost was that kind of very 60s sort of master planning logic applied, rather than older buildings, which when you look at them, they kind of have that nice sort of ramshackle look. It's like there's a sort of almost like a decades aesthetic in it somehow. Really nice.
Yeah, I think that just has happened rather than kind of deliberately.
I just had a thought, and I'm a lighting designer, so I'm coming at it from this. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just had a thought looking at this, and I think what you guys were talking about with you wanting to put this on a larger scale and use projections, and I'm wondering if you might have even done this on a small scale, but what this image really reminds me of is a theater space where you use gobos. Don't know if you know what gobos are. They're these metal discs that you put in front of a light,
Oh, yeah.
And they basically cast these nice shadows, almost like what you're getting there. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would be cheap and it would take thought, but I can almost see this as you have a space and you're projecting with light and you create gobos or kind of stencils of what you're doing, and then you can cast the shadows and use the light and maybe even layer that quite similarly to what you've done here, where you have different colors and different intensities of light.
Yeah.
And you could create that effect of this space where you draw attention to specifically what you want. But I think it would be cool because I think you're using these different elements and you're creating stencils, and there's something about that of using different technology parts, and not that gobos are pieces of technology in the same way, but using the metal and working with it. I think, I don't know, I just can kind of see it happening. And
I mean, I'd definitely be interested in that. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm talking about the work in a way is because I've been kind of head down, focused on making the work for about the last year, and then kind of just coming out and just going like, oh, what's everybody else doing? So I'm just interested in the directions that the work can go. One of the things I've been doing with one collaboration was for somebody to record the sounds of coming from the technology, so they were kind of moving through it with recording some of the sounds. But we made like a 1-minute video together. So they kind of so that might be another thing, working with different sounds as well.
Yeah, just the thought.
Yeah.
Just from my lighting design background.
Sort of leading on from that, I am really interested in the analog digital link. So I make music as part of what I do, and I also created some sounds between analog and digital. And one of the things I kind of had as a question from viewing your work that I've kind of found from making mine is that I guess analog has been around for longer, and somehow people almost think that it's more human than digital or something. I wondered if you had any thoughts on that kind of idea.
Yeah, I think I still think like that. I think there's something about analog, working analog, and the fact that I find it more tactile in a way, whereas my experience of digital things seems to be just on a laptop. That's the way I see it, but it's not always the way, is it? You know, I've got my phone all the time, and
I think it was just kind of a philosophical question that it's like, what truth's in that, you know, if you think about it.
I don't know really.
Any other questions?
And rather than a question, more like a series of comments, I would say. I'm really impressed, first of all, and it just made me think of Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. Within each image, you could see a story and a city and a different future alternative. So what it made me think of was some cyberpunk aesthetics as well as, you know, comic books. So I was kind of wondering if you ever think of, you know, exploring it with animation or maybe comic books as well, because I can kind of see lots of potential with that.
Yeah, I did go off on a little track of a storyline about a psychoanalyst who was being replaced by AI. I just got about, I don't know, 10 images done, and then I kind of just abandoned it really. So yeah, I did think about a comic book, but then it's kind of just trying to, there's so many different directions I can go in, and then I have to keep kind of keep going back, and I guess that's why working with the same 2 boxes of stuff has been really helpful, because it just gives me although the work can go off different directions, it got a certain focus to it.
Yeah, I mean, it can stay this way as well, because each image already has its story, I feel like, even though you don't have to really tell it. within itself, it's content, I would say. And it really makes you think, I think, through your work. With what we have, we still have so many opportunities and possibilities. You say just a box of things, but you can create these different worlds. So
yeah. When I was doing the remote workshops, I was just working with a piece of A4 paper and pencils and pens and things like that, and it was amazing over this period of 10 weeks, the amount of different kinds of works that we made, from just drawings, pieces of writing, sculptures, things like that. We were ripping apart things, folding things, and that's just a pencil and a piece of A4 paper. So it's just you have a limited resource of two things, and you can do so much with it. So I kind of enjoy that.
Hi. So the mention of the limited resources. It's always really inspiring and a great reminder. And you mentioned earlier as well that with your choice of colours, you just you do that as you're flowing. So I was interested in your workflow and whether the pieces seem to come together quite quickly and then you move on to the next one, or are you being more considered in the way that you work?
It goes in bursts. So I'll have a bit where I'm there'll be like a kind of flow of different images coming along, and then there'll be 2 or 3 weeks where nothing seems to happen, and then another flow of images comes through and things like that. So some of them come quickly, some of them just take a while, and then I've got a pile of images which from the last 2 years, which kind of, I'll still keep going over and over again and just see what comes out of them. So they're sort of simmering away there, just ready to be used or thrown away. I don't know which yet.
Yeah.
But,
so immersing yourself in the limited resources.
Yeah. I think I've kept the same inks that I bought 2 years ago. The only thing I've bought really is sort of few pencils, really.
Great.
Really.
Thank
and
you.
Paper.
Well, I guess also maybe other people are wondering if you're going to be doing any more workshops.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll do one here. And I'm looking for spaces to do them, really. So that's the other thing. So I'm really open now because I know that the workshops work, so just want to do more of them, really. And then,
Thank you.
Any other questions? I mean, I had one. So when you showed your work last year, and I think with some of the images here, you've got these really strong central subjects, and it's really sort of clear, sparse, open spaces.
Yeah.
And then some of the work you showed, the more recent work, is really dense. There's just so many layers and complications, and it takes a lot of work to see what's going on. I wonder if you could talk about that, and is that a deliberate shift, or is that something?
I think it's just occurred because I can get quite bored quite quickly with what I'm doing. I'm not bored with it, but I'll kind of go okay, maybe I could do that. What you're saying about the story, doing a comic book. So I'll be going but if this was a comic book, or if this was a movie, or this was a piece of immersive technology, I've kind of, so I'm still working in lots. It's like plate spinning, So I'm working with one image, and then I'm working with another image, and then I'll go back to print. And the flat images that I've been doing is it's about having access to the studio space where I can make a mess, really. So that's another important thing. So kind of where, because I'm a resident at the studio in Bath and here, the spaces tend to be clean, so I can't kind of be rolling ink around and things are, getting quite messy. Can I?
No,
all right then. Yeah. So So it's kind of just working around with what I got. I mean, the thing we'll start doing now is kind of like just inking up bits of the materials and that, and then using those as tools to make artwork. So it's got so the images will not have any digital references on themselves, but just, I don't know, taking a mobile phone and then just covering it in paint and then just using that as a brush. So kind of like,
that's fun.
Interested in that.
Any last questions from anyone?
I've got one.
All right, do it. Do it, Brian.
Right, so I've got a Galaxy SG52 phone. Anyway, so what I want to do is I want my phone to, if anybody's got a similar model which they don't want, which is broken, I'd quite like to have one, because I want to kind of have that phone which is working and the one which isn't, and then kind of use this phone to make the images from this phone and to see what I can do. Okay, so that's another thing there.
We can probably put a shout out for you, Brian.
Okay, I'll be up for that.
All right.
That's
Everyone, join me in saying thank you to Brian. All right, so before we go, if you want to stick around and hot test today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, give us a wave. There we are. We'll be happy to help. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you all again next time.